So what is a chief data scientist? Well, first time I got called a chief data scientist was in 2014. And back then, role really was not well understood. Bigger businesses now definitely have their handle on exactly what they need a chief data scientist for. Smaller and mid-sized businesses are also coming to terms with defining the role specific to their business. So it's complex, and obviously it means different things in different companies. But the four main characteristics of a chief data scientist are: first, you have to be a data scientist. And I hate to say that because it does exclude a significant number of great strategists and leaders from this position. But from what I've found, the organization simply does not trust you with their data science, machine learning, AI strategy unless you have the technical, you've done the job, and you understand the complexities of not only the technology itself, but also the nuance of actually hands-on building models, what it takes to get them into production. And that's just a trust thing at this point. And I don't see it going away anytime soon because the business understands how complex the technology is, how complex the value stream and the workflow that go into delivering machine learning based products. All of that means that in order to have confidence to pull off the role, and this isn't just from the data science team, this is the entire business. In order to have the confidence of the entire business, you need to have been a data scientist. I know that most of my authority with the team definitely came from just that source of credibility that I'd done their jobs before, been there, done that, and been pretty successful in the data science role myself. But it was surprising that also the rest of the company trusted me because I was a data scientist. I had also done the role. And it was one of the things that I got asked when I was brought in to be an interim chief data scientist at larger companies. It was one of the first questions. So did you actually do data science? They wanted to know specifics about projects, what I had built, what types of models I'd delivered to production, and not just talking about business metrics. They wanted to know that I understood the technology, the math, the stats, all of the things you would almost get in a normal data science job interview. I started getting asked before companies would bring me in to do that interim chief data scientist role. So yes, you need to be a data scientist, not just to lead the team, but also to gain credibility with the rest of the organization. Now, the second thing, talking about credibility with the rest of the organization, this is something that doesn't get talked about a lot. Yeah, I'm going to cover strategy, I'm going to cover leadership. Those are the other two, but you need to be an evangelist and somebody who can go through the entire company and sort of talk about all of the benefits, sell the benefits, explain how data science and machine learning can be used, try to get business needs out of the other organizations, make those organizations feel comfortable with their role in adoption, in building out products, in the strategy side of it. So I had to be an evangelist. I really did. It was almost like a road show. I did one very large Fortune 100 company, and it was a road show. I was talking to groups throughout the US, and I was on conference calls with international. I was talking to hundreds of different teams, and I had to sell it. I had a great slide deck by the end of that engagement where I was just selling the benefits, and I got really good at it. And that evangelist role is definitely something that's important and undersold. For a chief data scientist to be successful, I have to be someone who can build these coalitions around the technology, the projects, and get people to do things where I am not necessarily a leader in their team. I've got to get them bought in. And so I was an evangelist and I got really good at it. As a chief data scientist, that's a key piece, is introducing the technology. And in a lot of cases, other organizations don't understand how to articulate their business needs or how the product needs to work in order for them to be able to use it, adopt it, and for it to do all of the things that it was intended to, but also their customers. Understanding customer needs, you can't always, and I found this true in a lot of cases, I couldn't go and talk directly to external customers because there was a bit of a language barrier where I was talking data science product and they didn't have the vocabulary yet as customers and consumers. And so I needed to work with customer facing organizations and get the business needs sort of secondhand. And so I had to teach them how to do that. How do you talk to customers about data science and machine learning when you can't use those words? When you can't actually say, hey, what do you want an algorithm to do for you? And so there's a level of translation that I had to teach other organizations to be able to do. And that's not just talking to internal customers and stakeholders, but also customers that are going to have their hands on products that we're going to be delivering using a technology that they've probably never interacted with successfully before. And so I had to be an evangelist, a teacher, a trainer. There was so much to it. And I'll be honest, that was one of the most enjoyable parts of the role, was getting people excited about this thing that I'm really excited about and that I love doing and building. Now, obviously, you have to be a leader. You have to be able to, as a chief data scientist, lead a sometimes small team. And that's what's really interesting about chief data scientists. Sometimes you have a chief, a C-suite level role, someone who has a seat at the strategy planning table, and they'll have a team of 5. And I've seen this before. I've been in that role before, where my team was 5 people and I was in the room with the C-suite. And that's kind of interesting. Normally you have this organization, but for a chief data scientist, many companies, especially small and mid-sized businesses that are bringing chief data scientists in, they're bringing them in, and this is what I usually get brought in to do, is to build out the capabilities. So when I'm in that interim role, I may lead a team of 5 people, but I'm typically growing the organization significantly. I may even be consolidating data and analytics roles across the entire company into one organization that's going to be led by a chief analytics officer, chief data officer, chief data scientist. Again, a lot of different titles are getting thrown out there for the same type of role. But in a lot of cases, that interim role that I take on as a chief data scientist is to build the capability within the organization, consolidate it, make it run more efficiently and effectively. And so obviously, yes, I have to be a leader, but I'm also a leader who's growing a team, who's building the capability within the company. And so that changes the dynamic of the leadership. Number one, like I said, when I show up, I might have a really small team, but I am often at that table, at the strategy table, because I'm going to be taking parts of other people's organization and consolidating it under my umbrella. That's tough to do. Hey, I'm going to be taking your teams. Thank you. Thank you very much. They're now part of my team. You can understand there's often a little bit of friction involved there. In other cases, I am just building from nothing. There's nothing there. There's really no formal data and analytics role anyplace else. There's one-offs here and there, but I'm building it from nothing. And so you hear that piece of the role is critical to be able to build teams and in some cases absorb from other teams and be in that uncomfortable position of explaining myself and over again getting buy-in from people who should by rights be mad at me for what it is that I'm doing, but I have to teach them why this organization needs to be consolidated under one role and why having all of these pieces in different places is not only bad for the business, but also bad for their organization, why it isn't efficient, why their organization is going to get better and see benefits from consolidation. And so again, I have to be a little bit of an evangelist, but this time it's not the technology, it's the organizational structure that I have to evangelize. And like I said, in some cases, I'm building that org structure myself. So as a chief data scientist, especially now, as companies are expanding the data science, machine learning roles, I have to be a team builder. And so that's a different type of leadership. I'm not just the organizational leader. I am, in many cases, building the organization from scratch and growing to rapidly meet emerging needs from business. And some of those needs aren't well established, aren't well defined, aren't being well communicated. And that's part 4, strategist. As a chief data scientist, I am building the AI strategy for the entire company. Maybe that's a company of 500 people. Maybe that's a much, much bigger company. I've had Fortune 100 clients, and I've been a chief data scientist for a startup with 5 people. So I've seen all sizes. I've seen it from end to end. And so the strategy role, doesn't matter how big the company is, the strategy role is critical. And so a chief data scientist has to be a chief, not just a chief in name alone. The chief who sits down at the strategy leadership table. And that's really what chief, C-suite, senior executive means, is that you have a seat at the strategy planning table. So you have to have some strategy chops, and that's more than just business acumen. Strategy is more complicated than that. Strategy looks at planning, looks at goals, it looks at the dynamics of the marketplace, and understanding how the marketplace presents opportunities and threats, how the company has weaknesses. And I'm going through a SWOT framework, so I'm going to stop now. But you have to have this sort of deeper understanding of strategy. And again, back to why you need to be a data scientist, how data science, how the technology can be used to create opportunities and to meet business needs that the entire company is bringing to the table as part of the strategy planning process to really figure out what is the plan? What are the fundamentals that we are going to take advantage of as a company? How does the business model set the entire business up for successfully leveraging machine learning to reach the business goals? Does the business model have to change? And in a lot of cases, almost every case that I've been in, I've had to start changing the business model in order for the company to take advantage of machine learning and data science as both a cost saver, but also a revenue generator to truly make it a competitive advantage. I've had to change the business model, which takes a pretty strong understanding of strategy and also that evangelist role. Again, why I kind of love it because as a chief data scientist, I was constantly selling data science all day, every day. And especially at the strategy planning phase, because that was the highest stakes environment for me to be selling data science and machine learning, because the company then was betting revenue, betting the future of share price, of often people's careers, on me being able to build a sound AI strategy, and then as a leader and as an evangelist, going back and executing, putting in place everything that was necessary to realize, to achieve the potential of data science and machine learning. And that's a lot of what a chief data scientist does. So from my almost 7 years of experience as a chief data scientist and an interim chief data scientist, this is my basic definition of those four areas: being a data scientist, a leader, a strategist, and an evangelist. You put those four together and you have the complicated role that is a chief data scientist.